You see the slides,
Yeah.
Eunice? Yeah, okay. Not sure how to... So you can see the first slide, yeah?
Yeah.
And if I move it on, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So, good morning, everyone. And today's session is, my name's Shazia Khan, and I'm the tutor for teaching this session today, which is on 4.4 on people management. And we're looking at learning outcome 1 today, which is to understand the communication practices within organisations. We're looking at 1.1, which is to analyse the benefits of effective communication to organisation. And then we're looking at 1.2 to analyse policies and procedures that are used to enhance communication within organisations. And there are elements that we'll be covering in regards to 1.3 today, which is the legislation, and 1.4, the organisational structure. Is that okay, Eunice?
Please.
Is that okay, Eunice, yeah?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's okay. So the next slide we're looking at is the communication process. So if we look at the communication process, why do you think it's so important, the communication process? Why do you think communication is so important? Well, it's a way of trying to get something across to someone. So the communication process is like a two-way process, wherein the message will be in the form of ideas, thoughts, feelings, any sort of opinions are transmitted between two or more persons, with the intent to creating some sort of understanding between them. It's quite a dynamic process that begins with the conceptualizing of ideas by the sender, who then transmits the message through a channel to the receiver, who in turn gives feedback in the form of some messages or signals within the given time framework. So we can see here it says information source. So someone here, for example, it may be you or me, we have an idea. We signal that idea, and I turn that idea into a thought or stream of words. Then we've got the noise, so not clear what you want to say, so that might be in the form of images, gestures to express that message. Sometimes it's noise mumbling here when it's transmitted. So actually send, deliver or transfer messages using a medium or channel such as a report or image or speech and non-verbal behavior. Then the noise is perceptual, filters poor retention. Then the noise is physical noise, things like aeroplane, traffic, and then it's finally gone to the destination or the receiver, whereas the listener, audience, the viewers, the readers receive the message or a version of the message before they can carry on with it. Now, when we look at communication process, sometimes there are issues with the communication process, and there are barriers to the communication, which is the next slide, which is looking at, I think, different types of barriers to effective types of communication. So as we stated, communication is earlier is the process by which information is exchange between individuals in regards, when we looked at the process in regards to signs and symbols, and then there's also different sorts of barriers that may affect communication. So like we said, ambiguous, mundane messages that don't make sense and are not clear. Semantics, and these are barriers also known as language barriers. These barriers are caused due to improper communication between the sender and the receiver. The following instances of semantic barriers can be witnessed in communication. So, for example, poor quality of message when the communicator should be precise and easy to understand. That makes it easy for the receiver to grasp. Sometimes due to any sort of clarity and lack of clarity and complexity, there can be a case of semantics barriers as well. An example is a manager who may be conversing in English to a group of workers who understand and speak Bengali. It will create confusion among workers as they're not able to understand what is being conveyed to them. So it's really, really important, you know, because it links it with language barriers as well, and the fact that people understand things as well. Another one is physical barriers, which is those that arise due to certain factors like faulty equipment, noise, closed doors, cabins that cause the information sent from sender to receiver to become distorted, which results in an improper communication. Loss of transmission, actually, that is what the message is lost through transmitting, and through sending the message, there's, you know, there's barriers there, such as, you know, that it's not verbally conveyed properly. Failing to communicate, and that's like communication barriers, failing to communicate with the other party or failing to understand what you've actually said, and competition barriers, trying to, you know, compete against other providers as well in regards to communication barriers. Then we have other issues as such as cultural, linguistic, diversity barriers, and not listening. That's really important, because, you know, sometimes you know, it's difficult to kind of understand and conceptualize what the person's saying. So physical barriers can also be those that arise due to the certain factors like faulty equipment, as we mentioned earlier. Psychological barriers arise when a sender or the receiver of the communication is not in a position to express or receive the message. Any sort of psychological issues, like, can you identify any psychological issues?
Parkinson.
Sorry, yeah, Parkinson's. Yeah. What about things like dyslexia or nerve disorder, speech or hearing? Because sometimes them, you know, they cause a lot of issues as well. Yeah, so, you know, you need to take all these barriers into account, you know, and try and prevent these barriers from occurring.
Yeah.
Then we've got non-verbal communication, and this is the non-spoken aspects of communication, such as a person's manner of speaking, facial expressions, or body posture that express meaning to others. And non-verbal communication can complicate the task of communicating internationally. The non-verbal part of communicating is more important in some societies than in others. In many societies, the context or setting in which a message is delivered with its non-verbal cues has far more meaning than the words of the message. Why do you think non-verbal communicate? How can you identify, because it says body language, what does that identify?
Sorry.
When we say body language, what does that identify?
Someone using like signs to communicate.
Yeah, do sometimes body language, you know, a facial expression, express how they feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, body language, facial expressions, any sort of gestures, any sort of, physical characteristics, and these kind of identify non-verbal communication. So your face identifies what you're saying, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So sometimes when you using your eyebrows, your mouth, you know, they lift the eyebrows up, you know, in shock, their mouth, their eyes, facial muscles tend to convey any sort of emotion or any information that can be effective. Someone who raises their eyebrows is surprised at what is being said. So, you know, these kind of things identify non-verbal communication. So the next one is physical communication. Can you see this slide, Eunice?
Yes, yeah.
So physical, psychological, barriers. And the first perception is selectivity, exposure, filtering out unpleasant things and focusing on or recalling things not heard. Retention, filtering out of things that feel good and the tendency to forget those things that are painful. Experiential barriers, the difficulty in understanding things not personally experienced. Emotions influence both what is said and what is heard. And then defensiveness, the adjustments people make due to avoid acknowledging personal inadequacies that might reduce their self-esteem.
Yeah.
Interpersonal communication, communication that occurs again between two individuals, methods for improving interpersonal communication. Pay more attention. It's very important you pay attention to identifying any forms of communication because that shows that you are listening. Make yourself clear. So what you are saying, make yourself clear to what you are saying so the person understands. Be an active listener, so listen, because it's important to listen before you ask any questions, and don't attack the person's defenses, and also get feedback. Feedback is really important as well to identify what's going on.
Okay.
We've got organizational communication, and this is communication that occurs among several individuals or groups. Downward communications go from superior to subordinate. Then you've got lateral communication, is horizontal communication, move between departments or between people in the same department. Then we've got upward communications. They move from subordinates to superiors. And that goes down in the organizational hierarchy, and that's the importance of that as well.
Okay.
Formal against social structure. So rarely do the communications patterns match the formal structure. So the formal organization, so this at the top is the organizational structure where you've got the senior vice president, then the exploration, Williams, drilling, Taylor, production, stock. Then under the production, there's production and reservoir. Under the drilling is petrocycle, and then under exploration is petrocycle and G&G. And this is a bird's eye view of how the organizational structure works and how they work together. And then you've got an informal, so that's quite a formal organizational structure. Then an informal one, which identifies, you know, who works together and which departments they work in. So it's O'Brien who's in stocks. And then it's the the bird's eye view is the informal structure, which looks at everyone and how they work in their structure in regards to it. That would be an exploration of the production division. Then you've got multiple network dimensions. So they're 4-dimensional analysis: knowledge, access, engagement, and safety. And then knowledge network analyze only 1 dimension, which is the main bit of it is knowledge.
Okay.
There are some sources at the bottom where these have come from, and that is IBM.com services, which is referenced as using network analysis to improve knowledge creation and sharing. We've got special barriers to organizational communication, interpersonal barriers, authority, task, political identity, organizational structures, organizational cultures, and free speech. Why do you think it's so important to have an organizational structure in place?
So that you get to know who the right way of communication, who to go through first.
Yeah. And do you think that's very important to identify that in any organization?
Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, because then you know who to go to if there's any sort of queries or complaints or anything.
Yeah.
You know who the first person to approach.
Yeah.
So we've got getting upward feedback. So when you request feedback from people whom you trust and who will be honest with you, if the feedback is too general, ask for examples of specific recent behavior. Don't be defensive, make excuses, or blame others when you hear criticism. It's always better to get criticism rather than, saying everything is done okay. Do not overreact or underreact to feedback. Once the feedback is complete, summarize what the speaker said to you to make sure you understand. It's always better to ask questions and ask, different types of questions in regards to, where am I going wrong? How am I going to get better? These kind of things will help you. Explain what you are going to do in response to the feedback. Do it and then evaluate the consequences on performance, and then let the feedback giver know of the outcome. And also thank the person for his or her concern and advice, because that's the best advice you'll be getting in regards to any sort of feedback you want to get. So, it's better to ask questions, get all the feedback, and then thank the person as well about that. Fostering upward organizational communication. So social gatherings, union publications, regular meetings, performance appraisal meetings, grievances, attitude surveys, a suggestion system, an open door policy, which works well in some organizations and doesn't work well in others, indirect measures, and emails. So, these are any forms of ways to get fostering upward organizational communication. Then you've got improving downward communication, so open book management, so a management style in which a company opens its books to the employees, sharing financial data, explaining numbers, and rewarding workers for the improvement. Why do you think it's, sorry. Do you think open book management is good to use in a company?
Sorry?
Open book management, do you think it's a good style to use in a company?
Yeah, to know your employees.
Yeah, to know your employees, but also to identify how well the company is doing, and also rewarding the employees.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
So again, we look at improving horizontal communication. So we would, in regards to horizontal communication, we would appoint a liaison personnel, someone who organize and committees and task forces, and use independent integrators. Then improving improving informal communications. Here we will emphasize on informality, maintain communication intensity, and we will provide physical support. So we will provide the support for people to move forward and to get things better.
Okay.
Hierarchy of media richness and application for managerial applications. So we have the media, we have face-to-face, telephone, which is oral, addressed documents, unaddressed documents, which is written, characteristics. So we have feedback, which is given immediately, rapid, slow or slowest, and then cues and channels. So the ways it's done is audio and visual, audio, limited visual, and limited visual. The media richness, so we'd either go from high to low, best for communications that are ambiguous, emotional, divergent in background, and clear, rational, official, and similar in background. So the hierarchy of how the media application for managerial applications will follow. Language barriers in communication, and Salon and Lauderdale 2003 and Timmins 2002 mentioned that health literacy, culture and language affect health outcomes, and hence the nurses are expected to think about these factors not as neatly co-occurring, but rather as messily interacting in different ways to different degrees for different patients. Words are understood differently in different cultural contexts, and hence may affect communication between patients and doctors. And that's really important to take in, you know, the cultural barriers, because they affect how someone speaks, how someone listens, how someone conveys a message across and how it's communicated. So cultural barriers are really, really important in regards to that.
Okay.
Patients in a hospital quickly form their first impressions based on a series of experiences that take place from time to time. They enter the hospital complex to the time they exit it. So they experience everything and they have given their first impressions. For example, if they meet a nurse, they'll identify if she's nice, not straight away, but she'll identify how her persona comes across, her behavior, her, you know, verbal contact with you. They identify that. They go by what they see, hear and touch, the behavior, communication, attitudes, and professionalism, which is Thomas 2012. They also identify inadequate listening may lead to incorrect diagnosis. So it's really, really important that you listen, because, you know, sometimes we listen, but we don't take it all in. Importance of clinical interviews. So clinical interviews enable HCPs to gather, healthcare professionals to gather information, to build relationships and to educate patients, and each other of these functions occurs to some extent during the interviews. McGorry 2011 opines that the relationship between the healthcare professionals and the patient is often an unequal one. Hugman in 2009 mentions that though patients in general do not want personal intimacy with their healthcare professionals, they do want to feel that relationship have those qualities which would in other circumstances permit intimacy, the qualities that simulate trust, confidence, openness and healing. You know, so they want to feel that the information that they've given, you know, or they're given there's a lot of trust in it, a lot of empathy in it, you know, so they want to try and identify how the person is. Sharing sensitive information, the GPs, nurses, healthcare professionals who encourages open communication may obtain more complete information, enhance the prospect of a more accurate diagnosis and facilitate appropriate counselling, thus potentially improving adherence to the treatment plans that benefits long-term health. Differences between physicians and patients, including culture, gender, race and religion, can introduce bias into patient-physician communication. Why do you think it's so important, you know, to identify someone's culture and religion and things? Why do you think it causes problems?
I because
Sorry, what was that, Eunice?
sorry.
Is it because, what do you think? Do you think people have different, cultures, and what they think about, their religion may not, may prevent them from doing some sort of surgery, like taking blood tests and things like that?
Yeah, like culture or religion. Some
Yeah,
people don't donate blood, and here's the
yeah,
case: the patient needs blood, so it's kind of misunderstanding or else,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah,
because the patient needs blood, and according to the religion, they don't donate, like they don't.
yeah. And it
Yes,
does cause a lot of problems when they do,
yeah,
they don't understand,
yeah,
the actual communication between them.
yeah.
Satisfactory communication relies not on the newest innovation of technology, but rather listening to what others are saying, preparing before you speak or write, and offering positive, concrete feedback, which was identified by Bernard, 2001. Line of questioning, starting from taking down the details of a patient till the following up the treatment. The healthcare professionals need effective communication skills in asking questions to the patients. Only by asking questions they can understand the nature of illness and decide the treatment. For instance, in substance abuse cases, students may not be comfortable with direct questions asked by the GPs because it's a very delicate situation, so they may not want to, feel comfortable. So you have to be quite attentive and quite, understanding to them. Attention and respect to the complaint. Communication selectivity may act as a barrier to patient-doctor communication because effective communication involves full and undivided attention from the receivers. Raman 2015, we might have noticed that some healthcare professionals attend many other functions while listening to a patient. They may respond certain phone calls, signs, and some papers, and the like. Such interruptions irritate the patients because they feel that the healthcare professional now not paying attention and respect to their complaints. So when a question was asked covering this attention and respect issue, so it needs to be taken into account when looking at respecting patients. Empathy and concern for the patient's well-being. Apart from verbal communication, the healthcare professionals also use non-verbal means of communication to express their concern. Empathy and understanding to their patients. In fact, in doctor-patient communication, the non-verbal cues play a greater role than the words spoken, specifically to display the concern and empathy. For instance, when patients explain their health problems, if the healthcare professional at the surgery give a nod, signaling the assurance that their problems will be taken care of, patients feel more satisfied and they feel more comforting as well. And at time when patients need is some comforting gestures and words, you want to try and make the patient feel, comforted, but also you need to be empathetic towards what they are telling you, rather than rolling your eyes or having non-verbal communication. Disclosing bad or unpleasant result. In the information era, patients are well informed through various sources about the symptoms of a disease and also the possible diagnosis. So the challenge lies in how to break the bad news. Tasic says breaking bad news can be particularly stressful when the clinician is inexperienced, the patient is young, or there are limited prospects for successful treatment. In 1996, he identified this quote. Parameters affecting healthcare communication. So types of disease the patient is suffering from, gender of the patient, familiarity of the patient, financial status of the patient, and social status of the patient. So what we're going to go on to now is the second part of learning outcome 2, which is in regards to the legislation side of it. Okay, so let me just share a new document. Are you still on, Eunice? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we stop sharing that one and we'll just share the second part of it, which is this one. Can you see this one?
Yes, please.
So this is the second part of learning outcome 1, which is 1.3 and 1.4. So 1.3 is to outline legislation relevant to communication within organisation and to evaluate how the organisational structure impacts on the communication methods used.
Okay.
So handling information, again, the information about an individual's care and support may be personal and sensitive. This information must be treated as confidential and only shared with people who need to know. Respecting confidentiality is a legal requirement. It's essential to promote the individual and it's an important part of the building trust. You know, you can't go around, you know, talking about someone's case to another member of staff who doesn't work in that department, because it's confidentiality. Now, if the staff member, you know, needs to know anything about the patient, then that's different, but you can't just go around talking about patients just like that.
Yeah.
Information sharing. So information can be shared with people who need to know. Which of the people below would need to know about individual's care plan, care and support needs? The individual's neighbour, do they need to know? Does the individual's neighbour need to know?
No.
No. Healthcare worker who is involved in providing care? Yes.
Yes.
The individual's family or friends don't need to know, only if
No.
the worker's family or friends.
No.
No. A health and social care profession not involved in providing care to the individual.
No.
And a worker in a different role who's involved in providing care to the individual. And that can be like a physiotherapist or anyone from the dementia unit, anything like that. It could be anyone that needs to know. Social media. The internet enables sharing of information through social media, such as Facebook and Twitter. Mobile internet technology make it possible to share information instantly, increasing the risk of breaching in confidentiality. You know, social media has become one of the main streams now for everything, and it is affecting a lot of people's lives and it's breaching in confidentiality. People put their daily stuff on social media, which is, in my opinion, it shouldn't be done. You know, we should restrict certain things going on social media. Does it have an impact on people's life?
Yes.
Yeah. Data Protection Act. The Data Protection Act 1984 introduced rules on the storage and use of information. The Act was revised in 2003 to include paper-based filing systems data. So firstly, it must be processed in a fair and lawful way. It can only be processed for a limited purpose in a way previously specified that you have consented to. It should have to be relevant, adequate to their intended use and kept to a minimum. It should have to be accurate and up to date. It should not be kept for longer than necessary, and it should be processed in accordance with your rights. It should be stored securely, and it should be not transferred to other countries where there's no adequate protection in place. So it's really, really important that you take into account when you look at confidentiality and store people's information. Freedom of Information Act and Environment Information Regulations allow members of public to access recorded information held by public authorities in England, Northern Ireland and Wales. Handling information in health and social care. You must always work in agreed ways that protect information. Examples of policies and procedures which protect information. Computer firewalls. Secure storage of keys. So any keys that you've got to patients' information, keep them secure and obviously only have limited people using them. Office security codes are important. Not sharing passwords with unauthorized people. Locked filing cabinets and cupboards. Password protection, security fobs or card to access secure areas. So important that everything is kept in a secure place. Care plans are important tool in a good communication between those involved in providing care and support. In order to ensure quality and consistency of care, they must be kept up to date, complete, accurate, legible, factual without anyone's opinion and free from any jargon. Reporting concerns. So concerns about the recording, storing or information should be reported to your manager. Confidential files being left around. A missing key to the cabinet containing confidential files. Passwords being shared with unauthorized persons. Personally identifiable information being shared on social media. And workers discussing an individual in the pub. It's really important you keep everything, in regards to confidentiality at work. If your concerns are not taken serious, you have a duty to report incompetent or unsafe practice to the regulatory body. Knowledge. So what type of information does the Data Protection Act apply to? Spoken information which is given in training sessions, electronic files and organised paper filing systems, and information that does not identify individuals. Knowledge check. Who would be the first point of call if you have concerns regarding confidentiality? My manager or supervisor, my colleague, the individual or the family, and the Care Quality Commission. Which one do you think it'd be?
My manager, supervisor.
Yeah, you need to identify to your manager or supervisor what's going on and issues of confidentiality.
Yeah.
Which of the following people would be classed as as authorized person or would need to know personal information? A senior worker not involved in supporting the individual, a member of the family of the individual that you support, a colleague who is not involved in supporting care, or another worker from the care team providing support to an individual.
Yeah.
It would be D, wouldn't it? Because other teams work together. If patient has any sort of, psychological issues or physical issues, you have people from a different unit that work together, to help the person. Organizational communication that occurs amongst several individuals or groups. Downward communications go from superior to subordinate, from top to bottom. Lateral, horizontal communication between departments or between people in the same department. Upward communication is from the subordinate to the superiors. Formal and social structure, as we mentioned earlier, this was a formal structure which we went through, and then informal structure was the one in regards to just having the staff member's name. Multiple network, which we mentioned earlier as well, 4-dimensional analysis, knowledge, access, engagement and safety, knowledge network analysed on 1-dimensional. Special barriers to communication, which we mentioned earlier on as well. So authority, interpersonal barriers, tasks. So this is just repeating what we've gone through, okay? So getting upward feedback, request feedback from the people whom you trust, and we will who will be honest with you. If the feedback is too general, ask for examples. Don't be defensive, make excuses or blame others, and do not overreact or underreact to feedback. Once the feedback is complete, summarize what the speaker said to make sure you understand, explain what you're going to do in response to the feedback, and thank the person. Fostering organizational communication, social gatherings, union publications, regular meetings, performance appraisal meetings, grievances, attitude surveys, open door policy, indirect measures, and emails. Improving downward communication, as we said, an open door, a company which opens its books, its financial data, its numbers out to employers, is called an open book management, and it makes the workers feel that they are involved in the company. Improving horizontal communication, appoint liaison personnel, organize committee and task forces, use independent integrators and horizontal. Improving informal communications, you emphasize informality, maintain communication intensity, and then provide physical support. The hierarchy of media richness and application for managerial applications, which we mentioned earlier on, is just to try to refresh everything: face-to-face, telephone, addressed and unaddressed documents. Okay, so we've actually finished now. What I want you to do is go on to Moodle. If you've got any other additional resources you want to go on to Moodle for this module. Tomorrow we've got a session in regards to this, which is on learning outcome 2, which is to understand the principles of teamwork. Have you got any questions, Eunice?
No, please.
No?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for today's session, and please do your reading around Moodle on this subject area as well. And what we'll do is we'll meet up tomorrow at 10 o'clock for your second session.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot,
Eunice.
Eunice.
Okay.
Bye.
Get well soon. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll see you tomorrow then. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.